Well, Senator Santorum, want to appreciate your time here. Thanks for joining us on Washington Times Higher Ground. A lot to break down today. The Kids Online Safety Act. This is one of those pieces of legislation that's a big deal. A lot of people they don't tune in to things that are being proposed, but this is being sort of held up as an opportunity to protect kids. That's the way it's been presented. What do you say about the Kids Online Safety Act?
Well, look, I understand how legislators are under pressure to do something. There's no question. I'm talking about legislators, particularly on the right, who see children being exposed to all sorts of horrible things and participate in all sorts of horrible things, and how damaging these little where's my cell phone? I'll grab it. I mean, these little cell phones are portals to very dangerous things, and I get it that people are screaming at them and saying you got to do something. The problem is the people who are telling legislators they have to do something aren't doing the things themselves to protect their own children, and they're looking for someone else to with a quick fix instead of doing the work that's necessary to protect their children and their grandchildren. And that's sort of the basis of all the problems that we get into when the federal government or state government tries to step in and loco parentis. They believe it's their responsibility to fix problems, the problems that they have to use a very blunt instrument to fix, and in many cases, and I think in this case, turn power over to federal agencies to raise your children and to tell your children what's good for them and what's not good for them. There may be parents who agree with the federal Trade Commission and Lena Khan. And if you know anything about Lena Khan, just Google her name. She's the woman who heads the Federal Trade Commission. But this bill, the Kids Online Safety Act, gives Lena Khan and the Federal Trade Commission the ability to determine, what is appropriate content for your children or not. And they do so under the bill with consultation with the American Psychiatric Association or Psychological Association, which is a completely left-wing woke group of psychiatrists who used to call what is now the whole trans issue. They used to call it gender. What was it? Gender dysmorphia. Couldn't come up with a word. Gender dysmorphia, which was a psychological disease or condition, and now they promote it as a good. And this is how they've changed. But these are the folks who are going to be, according to the statute, who are going to be dictating policy. That number one, they shouldn't be doing that. Number two, we shouldn't be giving more power to the federal government over your children. This is an agenda of those who would like to see the government, whether it's at the preschool and primary and secondary school level, but now outside of schools, governing what your children are exposed to. So that's to me the biggest problem here is that parents don't recognize that they have the power right now to manage their kids' access to this material. There's all sorts of tools on every app, on every device to protect children. And then there's the most ultimate act, which is don't give your little kids cell phones. I mean, just how about that? Or don't give them access to these types of materials and tell them and educate them as to the dangers of this material. No one. When kids have a right to this information? No, they don't. They only have a right to what their parents say they have a right to, because their parents have the right to govern their access to this material. It's the same way. Do kids have a right to drive? Well, yeah, when you turn 16, you can drive. But no parent throws the keys to the car to the kids and say, just go drive, do whatever you want to do. That's not how we. That's not. And by the way. Turning on most apps in America today is much more dangerous than driving a car to the moral and health and maybe even physical health of their children. So this is what parents have to start recognizing, something that my generation of parents and maybe even the next generation after me of parents didn't realize. We weren't in that kind of world. We didn't realize how hostile the world has become, how dangerous it's become. And all you have to know is that most folks from Silicon Valley don't let their kids have cell phones. They don't let their kids smartphones. I shouldn't say cell phones, smartphones. They don't let their kids have smartphones because they know how dangerous it is. They know how corrupting it is. And we just have parents have to, instead of pointing to Washington and try to get someone else to do their job, need to do their job.
Yeah, it's interesting on paper, something like the Kids Online Safety Act, it's going to sound very good to some people, right? The name of it, what it's trying to do. But to your point, I mean, when the government makes a decision about what it thinks is moral and true and imposes that, you have a situation now in a lot of schools where there are plenty of messages being present in schools that parents do not want their kids exposed to. Whereas we're having debates about the role of prayer, making sure prayer isn't present, making sure God isn't present in schools. And yet
Right.
there are lots of other things, again, that would be objectionable to many families that are pushed. And so that question of what is the government going to push kids toward or prevent them from seeing? And what you're saying is that really this is a job of parents. And I think a lot of people would agree with you. Why do you think so many parents have maybe not gone into that role or done their job when it comes to technology, because it seems like there's a little bit of a maybe understanding gap there?
Yeah, it's intimidation. I mean, they their kids are much more facile with technology than they are. They grew up with it. It's like uh, reading and writing. That's that basic to kids. Understanding how to, they don't know how to read and write necessarily, but they do know how to manipulate a smartphone and use technology. This is something that parents feel like they're out of their league, don't have time or understanding on how to deal with all these things, and so they're looking for help. Well, I understand that. I get it. I'm sympathetic that they're looking for an easy out. There is no easy out to good parenting. Period. On any issue. And this is something that we tend to think there's always a simple solution, that we can push a button and make things good, but we all know that that's just not the case when it comes to raising children, and we have to be vigilant. We have to get into their world. We have to understand their world. That's been one of the problems in parenting for the last several decades. Is we don't recognize all of the threats that are out there. For a long time it was drugs and other types of behavior that was out there for kids to experiment with. They would cause them trouble. Now it's not just drugs; it's still there. Drugs is still out there, but it's technology, and so it is incumbent upon parents to any device that is in your home, any device that your children have access is, you need to know more about it than they do. And is that a pain? Is that something you want to do? No, but it's something you have to do if you want to keep your kids safe, if you want to keep your kids healthy, and want to keep their kids on the track to a good and productive life.
And there are tools for parents. There are things like Circle, which is just one tool that we've used in our house that allows you to turn apps off. It
Yep.
allows you to control the amount of time kids are spending on, even on the device itself. So there's a lot of tools for parents if they're looking for them to help them in that process as they're learning about these things, because it is important. You spoke a little bit about this before, but I just want to drive this home because one of the other pieces here, it's free speech. What implications in your view, what restrictions maybe on free speech could come as a result of the Kids Online Safety Act passing and becoming law?
Well, I mean, there's all sorts of other ramifications to this. You talk about free speech. I mean, the reality is, and one of the reasons that some of these left wing groups are opposing it is because free speech is not just free speech to say something, but also to hear something. And kids have a right to hear things. So if you're leaving it up to the government and they're the ones who are deciding, remember the government can't limit, has a hard time limiting what people can hear, because there is a free speech right. And just because you're under 18 years of age, the First Amendment applies to you too. You have a right to hear it. So really the best person and really the only person that can licitly prevent people from hearing and seeing things that you don't want them to see is you. And the government, may be able to restrict certain things that come to there, but again, it's skewed, not necessarily your values. And also, even if they wanted to do it, there may be things they can't limit as far as the access to your children hearing and seeing that you could. So that's another piece. The other thing is just the whole privacy issue, which we haven't really got into, but that's another issue here because for people to know that you're a kid, well, you've got to turn over information. And that means you, parents, have to turn over information because if you want to get on a website that you may want to get to that you don't want your kids on, you've got to prove that you're over 18 years of age, which means you have to give government IDs. You have to. So you say, well, everybody owes my government ID. Well, not every app does. Not every database has it. But now your government information is going to be in more and more databases because you've voluntarily give it to them. And so when they're hacked or compromised, that's a now threat to your security, much less that of your children. So this just opens up doors for problems. And it doesn't solve anything. It just really doesn't get to the nub of the problem, which is parents have to take this issue much more seriously and deal with it. And I understand you're a single mom or a single dad and you're busy and all those things. The most important job you have that no one else can do is to be the mother or father to your children. Everybody else can do everything else you're doing in your life. No one else can do that.
Well, and you mentioned that safety issue there too with personal information. That's another big piece of this. Now, your organization, Patriot Voices, you've been speaking out on this. How likely do you think it is that this becomes law?
Well, I'm hopeful that some of the things that we've been doing as an organization and me individually will have an impact on how legislators think about it. I've got a chance to I was just at the Republican National Convention and saw several folks there and was surprised that a couple of folks came up to me and actually mentioned my speaking out on this issue and sort of changed their perspective on these things. I just look, people are so desirous of doing something to protect children. Everybody wants to protect children. I get it. And it makes all the sense in the world to try. I actually did. I mean, when I was in the Congress, I actually worked with Hillary Clinton and John McCain on a bill to dealing with libraries. Well, that's different. I mean, that's public places where people can. So yeah, the government, it's a government school. So the government needs to make sure that certain bad material isn't available. But again, even with that, it ran up against First Amendment issues and on the court. Anytime the government gets involved in this space, there's going to be issues of how much the government can and can't do, and you're going to run afoul of constitutional issues. That's why it's if we had legislation that mandated educating parents and made part of whatever the technologists are doing out there part of their responsibility somehow to educate parents on their technology, that would make more sense than taking that responsibility away from parents. And another part of it is just having leaders of our country talk about this more. You never hear Joe Biden talk about parents and their responsibility, or Kamala Harris, or even Donald Trump, or anybody. No one in leadership of this country is saying and doing things to lead a cause to try to protect children from this horrible scourge. And you've seen the dramatic increase in the rate of medication of children, dramatic increase in the mental health issues, obviously the whole gender identity issue. And all of this is being driven, almost all of it is being driven by smartphones and technology. And this is an epidemic, and none of our political leaders, other than some, as you can see in the legislature, tried to do something about it by passing laws. The better thing they can do is by highlighting this issue, talking about it everywhere they go, informing parents. And I would throw on top of that, Hollywood and other influencers out there need to be using their influential position to speak out to parents. And yes, kids too, but really to parents to take this responsibility.
Yeah, even on what you just mentioned, it is interesting because there were some fears among some LGBTQ groups and abortion rights groups that this would prevent kids from getting information on LGBTQ issues and abortion. And so they were going out and saying, no, we want to make sure that kids have access to that. and there was some conversation about the government, or I guess those behind this bill, capitulating a little bit on some of that. And so again, you go back into what is the government's definition of truth and what the government believes to be real, and what information is going to be pushed on kids. And
yeah, all you have to do is look at public schools who are not run by the federal government. They certainly are influenced by the federal government, and all you need to do is look there, and you can see how the government can corrupt children and misinform children and do things that parents don't know anything about. And that's the issue here: is parents had faith and trust that their children would be in safe places and safe spaces. Well, you can't, if you can't trust the schools anymore to do that, and you certainly shouldn't trust big tech and other types of money making organizations who are trying to addict your kids to their app to care about the moral imagination of your children.
Well, I appreciate you taking the time breaking this all down. If people want to get more information on Patriot Voices and the work that you're doing on this bill and others, where can they go to do that?
Yeah, it's pretty simple. PatriotVoices.com, and you can go to ricksantorum.com. You'll be able to see what we're up to and join us. We're looking for people to help us to take the information that we're putting out there and contacting their legislator. And again, I'm not. I want to be really clear. I'm not condemning the legislators who are sponsoring this bill, or those who are supported this bill on the Republican side for doing evil things. I don't think they intend to do harm. I think they're just trying to do something. They're sort of grasping at straws because of the frustration of parents and others who are pushing them to do something, and so they've come up with something that they think isn't too bad. Well, you don't pass things that aren't too bad. You pass things that are good, and I'm hopeful that if enough parents and people talk to them, they'll understand that maybe they need to go in a little different direction on this subject area.
And encouraging parents to do their job. That's essentially, this is the parents' job. Appreciate you breaking it all down for us today. Thanks for your time.
Thanks, Billy. Appreciate it.